Wake up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m.? That's not an accident. It's a wake-up call from your mind and body. While most people roll over and waste this sacred hour, you have a rare chance to outgrow your competition, reflect on your life, and get a head start on mastering your day. But here's the kicker. If you're not using this time, you're wasting your potential. Waking up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. used to frustrate me. I'd stare at the ceiling, wishing I could fall back asleep. But then I realized something. Those quiet hours weren't a curse. They were a gift, one most people never get to unwrap. At first, I thought it was just stress or anxiety keeping me awake, but over time, I started using those early mornings differently. I started reflecting, planning, and reconnecting with myself. And you know what? My life changed. Instead of wasting that time, I learned that it's the perfect moment for clarity. There's something deeply powerful about the stillness, when the world is quiet and you're alone with your thoughts. It's in those moments you realize how much you've been avoiding. Those hours hold the answers most people never want to face. And that's exactly why they're so valuable. So before you hit snooze on your potential, ask yourself, what could you do with this time that no one else is willing to use? 1. Reflect on your thoughts. Waking up at 3 a.m. is one of those things that throws people off. The world is quiet, the darkness feels heavier, and suddenly there's nothing between you and your thoughts. And that's where the real work begins. When you're lying there, wide awake, unable to fall back asleep, your mind is practically screaming for attention. But instead of listening, most people panic. They grab their phones, turn on the TV, or scroll through social media, trying to drown out that internal noise. Let's be honest, it's easier to escape than to confront what's really bothering you. Here's where I'm going to get real with you. Those early morning wake-ups, they're not just random. They're the universe, or maybe even your own subconscious, trying to tell you something. When everything around you is still and all the daily distractions are gone, you're forced to sit with your own thoughts. And that's terrifying for most people. You can't hide behind your busy schedule or blame external factors. At 3 a.m., it's just you and the things you've been avoiding. This is the part where most people crack, because it's so much easier to numb yourself with distractions than to face what's really going on. Let me get personal for a second. I used to hate waking up at 3 a.m. I'd lay there, tossing and turning, trying desperately to shut my mind off. But the truth is, I wasn't just waking up because I had a bad dream or too much caffeine. I was waking up because there were parts of my life I was avoiding, and in the quiet of the night, there was nowhere to run. I'd replay conversations where I wasn't true to myself, moments where I made excuses, or situations that felt off in my gut, but I'd ignored. The truth is, 3 a.m. has a way of magnifying what you're running from during the day. Here's where the controversy comes in. Waking up at that hour is a sign that something in your life needs your attention, but most people won't admit that. They'll say it's stress from work or their busy schedule, but deep down, they know it's something more. Maybe you're in a relationship that's draining you, but you don't want to face it. Maybe you're stuck in a job that doesn't fulfill you, but you're too afraid to make a change. Or maybe you've been avoiding a harsh truth about yourself, like you're not living up to your own standards, or you're letting fear dictate your life. I'll tell you from experience, avoiding those thoughts doesn't work. When I stopped resisting and actually let myself reflect on those early morning wake-ups, everything changed. I started asking myself, why am I awake right now? What's bothering me? What needs to change in my life? And I got real honest. You see, most people don't wake up at 3 a.m. because everything's fine. They wake up because something is off, and it's a moment of clarity that's trying to break through. But here's the thing. This moment is an opportunity, not a burden. At 3 a.m., when it's just you and your thoughts, you have a chance to get brutally honest with yourself. This is where real self-growth starts. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also where you find the answers that your busy, distracted mind won't let you see during the day. Instead of filling that silence with meaningless distractions, use it to reflect deeply. I started doing this regularly, and I'm not going to lie, it wasn't easy. The first few times my thoughts were messy. I was faced with uncomfortable truths about my own habits, my relationships, and the direction my life was heading. But the more I reflected, the clearer things became. I realized I wasn't just waking up because of random thoughts. I was waking up because my life was out of alignment with my values. I wasn't living authentically, and I was avoiding the hard conversations and tough decisions I needed to make. Once I acknowledged that, things started to shift. Now, when I wake up at 3 a.m., I see it as a gift. I take that quiet time to reflect on my choices, my goals, and what's really important. I use it to recalibrate and refocus. If something is bothering me, I dig into why. If I'm avoiding something, I face it head on. And honestly, it's been one of the most transformative habits in my life. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. If you're waking up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., it's because your life is trying to tell you something, and you've been too busy, too distracted, or too afraid to listen. Don't waste this opportunity. Reflect on your thoughts and don't sugarcoat it. Be brutally honest with yourself. You'll be surprised at how much clarity you can find in those quiet, early hours when you're willing to confront. 2. Journal your thoughts. When you wake up at 3 a.m., your mind is in overdrive. The thoughts that creep in at this hour are raw, unfiltered, and often the ones you've been pushing aside all day. Instead of letting them spin in your head, grab a journal and start writing them down. This might sound basic, but there's something powerful about putting your thoughts onto paper. It turns chaos into clarity. Most people don't realize that the act of journaling isn't just about writing down what happened during your day. It's about processing the emotions and thoughts that we tend to bury deep. And those early morning thoughts? They're the ones that tell you the truth you've been avoiding. Let me give you an example. I used to wake up in the middle of the night, feeling overwhelmed by everything I hadn't done or things I was stressing over. My mind would race. Did I make the right choice? Am I headed in the right direction? What if I'm wasting my potential? The anxiety would snowball, and by the time my alarm went off, I'd feel like I'd already run a mental marathon before even getting out of bed. It wasn't until I started journaling that I realized something. Those thoughts weren't just random. They were clues to what I was really struggling with. By putting them on paper, I began to see patterns, recurring fears, and areas of my life where I was stuck. Here's the thing. Most people don't journal because they're scared of facing what's really going on inside their heads. They think if they don't write it down, it's not real. But here's the controversial truth. It is real, whether you acknowledge it or not. The problem is, if you don't face it, it controls you. When you journal your thoughts at 3 a.m., you take back that control. You're giving yourself the chance to see what's really driving you, what's holding you back, and what's keeping you up at night. I'm not talking about writing some fluffy, feel-good nonsense. I'm talking about raw, unfiltered honesty. When you wake up at 3 a.m. and you start writing, don't hold back. Pour everything out. The fears, the frustrations, the hopes, the regrets. It's in this space that you start to realize just how much you've been avoiding in your day-to-day life. And guess what? That's where growth happens. When you see your thoughts laid out in front of you, in black and white, you can't run from them anymore. Personally, journaling at 3 a.m. became one of my most powerful tools for self-awareness. I realized how much of my anxiety stemmed from not taking action on things I knew I needed to do. I'd write down the same fears over and over again. Why haven't I made that call? Why am I holding on to this relationship that's draining me? Why am I not stepping up at work? And seeing those thoughts repeatedly made it clear I wasn't moving forward because I wasn't facing the truth. Here's where journaling gets real. It forces you to confront your own BS. When you read back what you've written, you can't lie to yourself anymore. If you keep waking up worrying about the same things, it's a sign you're not taking action where you need to. And let's be honest, most people aren't ready to face that. They'll tell themselves they're just stressed or it's not a big deal, but deep down, they know better. Journaling strips away those excuses and shows you the reality of your situation. Think about it. When was the last time you gave yourself the space to just think? Not about the day's to-do list or the distractions, but about what's actually going on in your mind. Journaling at 3 a.m. is a way to access the thoughts you usually push aside because they're uncomfortable. It's your chance to be brutally honest with yourself. If you keep waking up stressed, anxious, or uncertain, it's time to ask yourself why, and journaling helps you do just that. Now, some people might think journaling is soft or pointless, but here's the truth. The people who avoid it are the ones who need it the most. They're scared of what they'll find when they start putting their thoughts on paper. But I can tell you from experience, the more you write, the more you'll understand what's driving you and what's holding you back. You'll start to see the patterns in your thoughts, and you'll gain a level of self-awareness that most people never reach because they're too busy avoiding their own truth. Journaling gives you clarity. At 3 a.m., when your thoughts feel overwhelming, writing them down gives them structure. It takes the weight off your mind and puts it into something tangible. You'll see the things you've been avoiding, the decisions you've been too scared to make, and the parts of your life that are causing you stress. And once it's on paper, you can finally do something about it. You can make a plan. You can decide to take action. You can stop running from your own mind. So, the next time you wake up at 3 a.m., don't just lie there in frustration. Grab a journal and let your thoughts flow. Be real, be raw, and don't censor yourself. You'll be surprised at how much clarity you'll gain by simply writing it all down. And trust me, those middle-of-the-night thoughts are trying to tell you something. Don't waste the opportunity to listen. 3. Make a to-do list. You wake up at 3 a.m. and your mind is racing. What do you do next? Instead of spiraling into stress, anxiety, or trying to fight it, turn that energy into something productive. One of the simplest but most effective habits you can build in these early morning hours is creating a to-do list. I'm not talking about a basic half-hearted scribble of tasks that you'll barely look at later. I mean a real, detailed, focused list that gives your day structure and purpose. Here's why this matters. Waking up at 3 a.m. is often a sign that something's out of balance. Maybe you're overwhelmed with responsibilities, or you've been procrastinating on important tasks. The act of making a to-do list in these early hours is your way of regaining control over your day, your mind, and ultimately, your life. Think about it. When you're lying there in the dark, overwhelmed by everything you have to do, your brain can't possibly focus. But writing it all down, that gives you clarity, organization, and the ability to actually see what needs to be done. Let me give you a real example from my life. I used to wake up in the middle of the night, panicked about work, personal goals, and deadlines I hadn't met. My brain would be jumping from one thing to another. Did I send that email? Have I prepped for tomorrow's meeting? What about that personal project I keep putting off? It felt like I was drowning in a sea of unfinished tasks. I'd spend hours just stressing over it, and by the time the sun came up, I was mentally exhausted before the day even started. But then I started turning those anxious wake-ups into something productive by making detailed to-do lists right there at 3 a.m. Here's the thing. Writing it all down stops the mental clutter. Instead of feeling like everything's spiraling out of control, your tasks suddenly feel manageable. It's almost like you're transferring the weight from your brain to the page. And let's be real, most of the time, it's not even as bad as you think it is. Once it's written down, you realize that those looming tasks are actually achievable, one step at a time. A good to-do list breaks down the chaos of your thoughts into actionable steps. But let's get a little controversial here. Most people don't make to-do lists because they're afraid of seeing how little they actually accomplish. Yeah, I said it. It's easier to keep things vague, to convince yourself that you're too busy, too overwhelmed, or that you'll get to it eventually. But that's the problem. Eventually never comes if you're not intentional about it. A 3 a.m. wake-up call is a perfect reminder that your mind is telling you it's time to get your act together. Now don't just make any random list. Get strategic with it. Here's how I do it. I split my list into 2 sections. The first section is for must-dos. These are the non-negotiables, the things that must get done that day no matter what. It's usually a small number of high-impact tasks that move me forward in my career, personal goals, or well-being. The second section is for the nice-to-haves. These are the tasks that would be great to accomplish but aren't going to ruin my day if I don't get to them. The beauty of this system is that it forces you to prioritize. Most people load up their lists with 1 million tasks and then feel like a failure when they don't check everything off. That's because they're trying to do everything instead of focusing on what truly matters. Waking up at 3 a.m. gives you that rare moment of clarity to see what's really important and what's just noise. By breaking your list into must-dos and nice-to-haves, you're putting your energy into what will make the biggest difference in your day. Here's the other thing. Don't just stop at listing tasks. Go deeper. I've started adding why next to each task. Why do I need to do this? What's the purpose behind this item on my list? This is where things get powerful because now, instead of just mindlessly checking boxes, you're aligning your to-do list with your values and long-term goals. If you're waking up at 3 a.m. worried about a project, write it down and ask yourself, why am I stressed about this? Why is this important to me? This kind of self-reflection turns your to-do list into more than just a productivity hack. It becomes a tool for personal growth. Let me be real with you. If you're not making a to-do list, you're just floating through life, reacting to whatever comes your way. When you wake up in the middle of the night, it's your mind trying to give you a signal that you're not in control of your day. Making a to-do list at that moment is your chance to take that control back. But here's the hard truth. Most people won't do this because it forces them to confront the fact that they've been wasting time, avoiding responsibility, or not living up to their own potential. And trust me, I've been there. I used to wake up at 3 a.m. with a list of things I knew I should have done but didn't. I'd spend the next few hours tossing and turning, dreading the day ahead. But the moment I started making a to-do list in those early hours, things shifted. I wasn't dreading the day anymore because I knew exactly what I needed to do and why. It gave me a sense of purpose and direction that I was lacking when I let my thoughts run wild. So the next time you wake up at 3 a.m., grab a pen and paper. Make a to-do list that's real, actionable, and tied to your values. Don't just list a bunch of random tasks. Focus on what's going to move you forward, and don't be afraid to confront the things you've been avoiding. Trust me, that 3 a.m. wake-up isn't a curse. It's an opportunity to get ahead of the day, reclaim your mental space, and take charge of your life. 4. Embrace the quiet solitude. Waking up between 3 and 5 a.m. often feels like you're the only one in the world who's awake. That eerie quietness, the stillness of the night, it's unsettling at first. But let me tell you something most people miss. This quiet solitude is a gift. It's one of the few times in the day when the world stops demanding things from you. No texts, no calls, no distractions. Just you, your thoughts, and the silence. Most people hate being alone with their thoughts. It's uncomfortable. We've been conditioned to constantly fill the silence with noise, social media, Netflix, music, endless scrolling. But when you wake up in the dead of night and everything is still, there's nowhere to hide from yourself. And that's exactly why this solitude is so powerful. It strips away the distractions and forces you to confront the one person you can't escape, you. Here's the controversial truth. Most people avoid this kind of quiet because they're afraid of what they'll find. They're scared of facing their own insecurities, doubts, and failures. It's easier to drown it all out with the noise of everyday life. But when you're awake at 3 a.m. and the world is silent, that's your chance to sit with yourself and get real about where you are in life. It's uncomfortable, yes, but discomfort is where growth happens. I remember a time when I used to hate waking up in the middle of the night. I'd feel anxious, restless, and lonely. The silence made me feel small, like my problems were magnified in the quiet of the night. But over time, I started to see the value in it. The quiet forced me to reflect in ways I never could during the busyness of the day. There was no one around to influence my thoughts or distract me from what I needed to face. It hit me one night when I was sitting there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of all the things I hadn't done. Instead of trying to push the thoughts away, I embraced them. I let the quiet solitude wash over me and accepted that this was my space to think, truly think, not just about to-do lists or daily responsibilities, but about who I was becoming and where I was headed. In that stillness, I started asking myself the hard questions. Am I happy with where I am? Why do I keep avoiding that one thing? What am I afraid of? The quiet gave me the mental space to dig deeper than I usually do. And guess what? The answers didn't come from scrolling Instagram or binging a series. They came from sitting in the silence and listening to my own mind. Most people are so afraid of solitude because it forces them to confront their inner demons, the fears, doubts, and failures that they've been suppressing. But here's the truth. Those demons don't disappear just because you're avoiding them. They're there, lurking, and the quiet of 3 a.m. brings them to the surface. But that's not something to run from. It's something to embrace. Because once you face them, you can deal with them, and that's how you grow. Solitude, especially in the dead of night, is where you can be most honest with yourself. It's a rare moment where there's no one around to judge, no expectations to meet, no pressures to conform. You can just be. And in that being you can discover things about yourself that you wouldn't see otherwise. The quiet strips away the superficial and forces you to get real. Think about it. When was the last time you truly sat alone with your thoughts? No distractions, no multitasking, just you and the silence. It's probably been a while, right? We live in a world that's constantly demanding our attention, constantly pulling us away from ourselves. Waking up at 3 a.m. is a reminder that sometimes the universe is telling you to slow down, to stop running from your own mind, and to sit with your thoughts. It's telling you to embrace the solitude and let it work on you. But here's where it gets real. Embracing solitude isn't about zoning out or letting your mind wander aimlessly. It's about intentional reflection. Use that quiet time to ask yourself the tough questions. What are you avoiding in your life? What's keeping you stuck? Why aren't you taking action on the things you know you need to do? This is where the real work happens. The quiet forces you to face the truth you've been running from, and that's where growth begins. In my own life, those 3 a.m. moments of solitude have become some of the most profound times of self-reflection. I've realized things in those quiet hours that I never would have if I had just filled the space with distractions. I've made decisions in that stillness that have changed the course of my life because the quiet gave me the clarity to see what was really important. And here's the truth. Most people will never experience this because they're too afraid of being alone with their thoughts. They'll fill the silence with whatever they can, TV, podcasts, social media, anything to avoid the discomfort of solitude. But those who are willing to sit with the silence, to embrace the quiet solitude of the night, are the ones who will find clarity, growth, and purpose. So, the next time you wake up at 3 a.m., don't reach for your phone. Don't try to distract yourself. Sit in the stillness. Embrace the quiet. Let your mind wander, let your thoughts flow, and see what comes up. You might be surprised at what you discover about yourself in those moments of solitude. And when the sun finally rises, you'll be ahead of the game. Because while everyone else was sleeping, you were getting to know the most important person in your life. You. 5. Stretch your body. At 3 a.m., when you're wide awake and the world is still fast asleep, your body is probably feeling stiff, heavy, or even restless. It's tempting to just lie there, hoping sleep will take over again. But what if you use this moment to tune in to your body? A simple stretch can make all the difference, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Most people underestimate how much tension they carry in their bodies. A good stretch at this hour can be the reset you didn't know you needed. Here's the reality. When you're tossing and turning in bed, your body is begging for release. Stretching isn't just about loosening up stiff muscles, it's about waking up your whole system. You've been lying still for hours, and your muscles get tight, blood flow slows down, and your body becomes a little stagnant. Stretching brings your body back to life, sending fresh oxygen and blood flow where it's needed most. Personally, I used to ignore the signs my body was giving me. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. feeling restless, mentally and physically, but I'd just lie there, staring at the ceiling, hoping sleep would return. But when I started incorporating stretching into my early wake-ups, it completely shifted my energy. I'd roll out of bed, do a few simple stretches, and feel a wave of relief wash over me. It's as if all that tension I'd been carrying throughout the day and night just melts away. Now, let's get real here. Most people think stretching is just for yoga enthusiasts or athletes. But the truth is, your body is screaming for attention, especially if you've spent your day hunched over a computer, glued to your phone, or sitting for hours. That 3 a.m. wake-up is your body's way of telling you, hey, you've been neglecting me. Let's fix that. I'm going to hit you with some controversy here. We live in a society that glorifies mental strength and productivity, but we ignore the body until something goes wrong. We push through the discomfort, ignore the stiffness, and wonder why we feel drained all the time. We take our bodies for granted until they break down. Stretching at 3 a.m. when the world is quiet is a way to reconnect with your physical self, to give it the care and attention it deserves. And here's the kicker. When you stretch your body, your mind benefits too. The two are deeply connected. When I started waking up in the early hours and stretching, it became more than just a physical release. It became a ritual. I realized that stretching wasn't just about loosening up my muscles, it was about loosening up my mind too. As I stretched, I could feel the tension of the day, the stress, the overthinking, the mental clutter start to fade. It was almost meditative. I wasn't just stretching my body, I was stretching my mind, creating space for clarity and peace. But let's get deeper. Stretching in these quiet hours isn't just about feeling good in the moment. It's about preparation. You're not just waking up your body, you're priming it for the day ahead. Think about it. You've been lying in bed, your muscles tense, your circulation slow. How do you expect to face the challenges of the day without getting your body in the right state first? Stretching is a form of self-respect, a way of saying to yourself, I'm going to be intentional about how I start my day. I'm going to care for my body so that it can carry me through whatever comes next. There's a mental shift that happens when you stretch at 3 a.m. You go from feeling restless and anxious, like the day is controlling you, to feeling in control of your body and your mind. It's empowering. You've taken a moment of discomfort, waking up in the middle of the night, and turned it into something productive, something that benefits you. And honestly, there's something almost magical about stretching in the dark, in the silence, when the world is asleep. It's just you, your body, and the stillness. No distractions, no noise. Let's get into the practical side of it. You don't need a full-blown workout routine at 3 a.m. Start small. Simple stretches like reaching your arms above your head, rolling your shoulders, or touching your toes can do wonders. I like to start with a full-body stretch, reaching my arms as far above my head as possible, feeling that pull in my spine. Then I'll move into some gentle neck rolls, shoulder rolls, and hamstring stretches. It doesn't need to be fancy. It just needs to be intentional. Listen to your body. Where are you feeling tight? Where's the tension? Stretch those areas out. What I've found is that after stretching for just a few minutes, I'm not only physically more relaxed, but mentally, I'm in a better place too. My mind isn't racing anymore. The act of stretching, of focusing on my body, pulls me out of my head. It's like hitting a reset button. By the time I'm done, I feel grounded, more connected to myself, and ready for whatever comes next, whether that's going back to sleep or taking on the day. And let's be honest, most of us don't give our bodies the attention they deserve. We spend our days sitting in front of screens, hunched over, disconnected from our physical selves. Then we wonder why we feel tense, stressed, and drained. Stretching at 3 a.m. is your chance to reverse that cycle. It's your moment to reconnect with your body, to release the tension, and to honor the vessel that carries you through life. It's a small act of self-care that can have a huge impact on how you feel, physically and mentally. So the next time you wake up at 3 a.m., don't just lie there. Get out of bed, stretch your body, and feel the tension melt away. It's not just about flexibility or fitness, it's about giving yourself the space to reset, to clear your mind, and to prepare for the day ahead. Trust me, you'll thank yourself for it later. So the next time you find yourself awake between 3 and 5 a.m., don't see it as a curse, see it as an opportunity. These quiet hours could be the game changer you never knew you needed. Reflect, stretch, plan, and embrace the solitude. While everyone else is stuck in the same old routine, you'll be ahead of the game, using those precious hours to grow, reset, and take control of your life. Remember, life doesn't wait for the perfect time. Sometimes the best moments happen when the world is asleep. What will you do with your 3 a.m.?